Do 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 do. That's not even the song that was playing, is it? Oh, what episode is it? 111, I think. Ah, hello, and welcome to episode 111 of Retropower Uncut. We're filming this in the morning because this afternoon I'm delivering some cars to the NEC, which Jamie said, oh, we should mention that so people can go. Then realised the video goes out on Sunday night after the show's finished. But because we're filming in the morning, I haven't had my morning roundstone coffee yet, so I'm doing that now. And then we shall go and see what is going on this week. Yeah, there we go. Right, I'm throwing your spoon because I don't want to get in the way of the camera. Right, follow me. Oh, the heater's come on. Hopefully that won't be too noisy in the video. Right, I'm going to start with the, shall we call it the elephant in the room, the NSU. So this is actually a project that has been parked for a few years now. It's actually, I don't know if anybody's spied it in the background, but it's been on the mezzanine, sort of over the body prep area. It's an NSU Ro80. And actually for quite a while it was a car, when it was in the workshop, it was a car where I'd say to people when they came in, if you have a prize if you know what this car is. And actually more people knew what it was than I expected. But yeah, it's a bit of a quirky thing. If I'm honest, probably led to NSU's demise. They were, I think, bought out by VW when they were in a bit of financial pickle, which I think was largely due to this car. Ridiculously technologically advanced, some might say unnecessarily so. Front wheel drive, rotary engine, McPherson struts, all of which was pretty new at the time. It had a crazy pneumatic clutch system. So it was essentially a traditional clutch, and there's a kind of like a switch or a load sensor. It's basically just a switch in the gear knob. So it's a traditional manual box, but when you go to shift gear and moving the knob clicks the switch, it automatically disengages the clutch for you. Now, I've never driven one. I don't know what it actually is like to drive when it's all working properly, but I imagine they probably have their fair share of problems. Anyway, this came to us originally just for a body shell restoration, which we did a few years back, and then the owner said, well, perhaps you can build it as well, which was a bit of a difficult process because we were just given all the parts in a big sort of in a big box essentially. So what we're now decided to do, because it's been parked for a while, he's keen now to get back on with it. So we're going to take it through to the stage of it being rolling, and I think weather tight. So we're going to try and get all the glass in, sunroof in, get it rolling, and then it can go back to him so he can carry on the build to a finished car himself. So touch wood, shouldn't be too far off. We've already done a lot of the work previously, so we're just waiting on a few parts, replacement top mounts, lower ball joints. There's some oddities about these, and this must have not helped in the financial position of NSU. They made a load of changes to them kind of halfway through the production run. So on the front end, for instance, like all the suspension components were just changed a small amount. I don't know why. Somebody could probably inform me why. The geometry was changed slightly, and the way the struts were made was different. So the strut is different, the hub carrier is different, the wheel bearings are different, the hubs are different, the wishbones are different, the steering arms are different, top mounts are different. All of those things were changed, but so subtly and seemingly with totally different production methods. So it must have been quite an expensive undertaking. It just seems very odd. So it's a bit of a mysterious story on the NSUs, which I'm sure some people can probably fill me in more on. But at the moment, our job, getting that glazed and rolling, and then that'll be going back to its owner. So that's that. I'm going to go around here. Excuse me one sec. I can also tell it's morning because my throat needs a good clearing. E-Type. We've been going through all of the bits essentially to get it rolling. So the owner had already had the rear axle assembly rebuilt for this, but the front end components have all been supplied as they were from when they were removed from the car. So we're stripping all those apart, organising them by what process is going to occur on those, zinc plating on some parts, Xylan coating on some parts, powder coating on some parts, So they're being prepared to go for those various processes. And we're just sort of in the early stages of starting to order up some parts for this. I know Adam's working on the fuel plumbing at the minute with a view to getting the main fuel lines in before the rear axle goes in, because they go over the top of that. So he's working on that at the minute. I think I mentioned last week that the owners said on this, essentially anywhere under the skin we can improve it or modernise it a bit, please do so. So for instance, on the fuel system's likely to be fuel injection now. On the fuel system we're going to run aluminium hardline. We use a company called A-Tech in the UK, one of very few fuel hose and fitting manufacturers that actually manufacture in the UK. Most of the ones you buy online are made in China and then just sold with UK branding. But A-Tech actually manufacture in the UK, so they're a supplier we use quite a bit. So we're just speccing up some fuel lines, etc., to get those in before the rear end goes in. So looking good on that. Land Cruiser, some quite good chunks of progress on that, although again nothing massively groundbreaking visually. Bobby's been working on quite a few things. He finished off the wiring loom last week. John's been finishing off some of the plumbing, so he'd got the last batch of all of the areas of plumbing that needed pipes making up. He'd got them all cut to length, marked, so they've all now been crimped, and he's just in the process of doing the final fit. So that includes the fuel tank vent pipes, and actually linking to that is the filler neck which is made. So it's a stainless steel filler neck we've made with a vent pipe near the top of it. And the large bore vent pipes that he's been fitting at the moment are the ones that vent out of the top of the neck when you're actually filling the tank. So when you've got the fuel pump trigger in, it vents out above the end of the nozzle to stop it clicking the pump out. So he's got those in. He's done the remaining aircon lines, they've been fitted, and the transmission oil cooler lines. So all of that lot's done. So actually I think that pretty much buttons up all of the plumbing on the car, with the exception of the fuel plumbing to the fuel rails, because the manifold's not been made yet. Bobby's been on with the rear number plate holder. So on the rear door, the original number plate holder is this huge contraption with two sort of floodlights that come out the top and face back towards the number plate. Seems excessively big, so when we did the metalwork, we'd planned in some changes on that. One was that we've got a contact set onto the door, so rather than having a wire linking over to the door, it's just got some little contact patches that contact when the door's shut. And then we neatened up the way the wiring comes through to the number plate light. And then Bobby's now made the number plate mount and the plinth for a smaller, more compact light on that. So that's good. We're happy with that. That's going to be painted now. And he's done the bonnet lashes now. He's done a little bit more work on the bonnet alignment. There was just a few little tweaks we wanted to do to just improve that a little bit. But that's all done. He's been getting the headlight wiring finalised. Headlights are going in. We've got some nice little Philips LED bulbs that we're using on that. They're what we've used previously actually. There's a lot of rubbish, cheap LED conversion bulbs on the market, but the only ones we've found to be any good are these Philips ones, which originally they had like a separate sort of ballast, if you like, with them, but on the newer ones they've got like a little fan on the back of the bulb, which is kind of cool, a little cooling fan. So yeah, we're doing those. So yeah, that's where we're at. We're just kind of getting various auxiliary features in. The spotlights have got to go in next. So the bezels for those are away being Xylan coated. The back shells have been painted silver. The bezels we wanted to Xylan because when you fit the plastic covers over, there's a little kind of latches on the plastic which push past, and we were worried if we painted them with normal paint that might actually damage the paint, so they're being coated. But they'll be ready to go on after that. So yeah, we're in a good position on that, and hopefully the exhaust components will arrive soon and we can do the exhaust. If I sneak through here, Manta, we're just waiting on the gearbox to come back from rebuild. And the wheel centres actually have just been taken yesterday to Andy at Concept 303 to do the bolt drillings for the actual split rim bolts and the wheel bolt drillings. Morris, few areas of progress on this. The suspension, the Nitron coilovers arrived last week, so we've got those on this week. They're looking good. Happy with how they are. Obviously, test driving will prove where we are with spring rates. We've just taken a bit of a stab in the dark on the spring rates, but the front, by feel, just pushing it, the front feels pretty good. The back may be a little stiff, but I'll find out when I drive it. Jim's been doing the number plate mountings, which are now done. Bracket on the front. This one just straight into riv nuts on the boot lid. They're actually the original plates that this car, I think, was supplied with new, and they're like separate letter plates. Now I can't show them because we don't want to show the registration, but they're really cool, like original plates. So they're a nice finishing touch on the car. And we're also putting the original VIN tag. Although we've had a nice new like laser etched one, we're putting the original under the bonnet as well, just as a little nod to its past. What else? The bonnet release cable. I don't know if I showed it last week or not, but the billet bonnet release lever mechanism that Adam had designed was machined, came back, anodised, assembled. That's now fitted. James has fitted that, fitted the cables, attached them up to the latch mechanisms that Stu made when we were at the metalwork phase, and they look like they're good, working nicely, really happy with that. And then another thing was a fault find on the power steering. We initially thought power steering wasn't working at all, and then we did notice that when you raise the revs, you did then get some power steering. So we suspected possibly the pressure relief valve on the pump was sticking open. So we had a look at that, and that was exactly the problem. It's a Recon pump, and when they've screwed the relief valve in at the Recon place, it's like they used some sort of plastic sealing washer, and it's kind of got squashed down rather than sealing up under the shoulder. It's got squashed down into the threads, and some of that had jammed down into the valve itself. So we've rectified that. Power steering's now working fine. So yeah, we're just carrying on with the build process on that. Stratos, nothing significant. I've got the registration plates for that. I've got a new steering wheel going in that because after the owner sat in it, he wanted it to be a little bit further away, so we're getting a flatter steering wheel in. We've got a new road wheel coming because we noticed that one of the wheels, when we had the tyres fitted, wouldn't balance up. And having tried swapping the tyres over wheel to wheel, the problem always stays with the same wheel. So there's actually a fault with one of those wheels, and it runs slightly out of true, and you just can't get it balanced. So I've got a replacement wheel coming for that, and as soon as that arrives, then we should be in a position to do some road testing. Weather dependent, because that's one of the downsides of this time of year. All these cars coming to completion, the weather is atrocious. So a bit weather dependent on that. And speaking of road testing, the Mustang is about ready for that. We finished the power steering switch over to the Borgeson type power steering. The brake servo installation is done. We've actually just drove that round to the body shop to do some paint. Basically, the whole paint finish needs its sort of final flattening and polishing. And also, we damaged the scuttle. It's an absolute schoolboy classic error, but the windscreen wipers. It's almost like one of the early lessons you learn in building cars is making sure you check where the wipers are parked before putting the arms on, so they don't spin the wrong way and go onto the bonnet. And somehow Adam, although he will not forgive me for saying this, forgot to do that. And the first time the wipers were turned on, they went the wrong way and scraped a bit of the scuttle panel. So the guys are just repainting the scuttle panel, but not a big job. And then they'll be getting the paintwork up to scratch. And then, yeah, we're pretty much into road testing. Although it's, at the moment, I think it's still running around on its space savers, which it looks bizarrely cool rolling around on those yellow space savers, but it will have to at some point go onto its correct wheels. And on that note, I think I'm going to hand over to Nat. So plenty of mugs and hoodies and shirts, etc. in the shop, so go ahead and buy those, and here's Nat for the other half of the video. I'll see you next week.
Right, well, hello folks, and welcome to the dark side for this week's Retropower Uncut fabrication and bodywork. So we're going to start with Project Kuma Mark 1 Escort, and Tom has been working on this. He's actually done an awful lot of work on this week, which is good because I've been bashing around doing all sorts of other things and not really achieving that much on it, but he has, so that's good. So first, start here because it's on the floor. Suspension turrets. He has fabricated the rear suspension turrets for this body shell and done a jolly nice job of it too. Those are, we'd already cut the flanks for the sides, 16 gauge steel. We'd already CNC cut those. He's CNC cut the tops. This is 3mm cold roll steel, cold roll mild steel. He's CNC cut those, folded them, angles on there, and then that's been MIG welded, tacked up, set up on the bench, tacked up, and then MIG welded inside and out. A little aside on that was, I can't remember if I mentioned it when we did the other ones, but to shape this, we did the unique feature of, we happened to have a CO2 bottle kicking around. It was a convenient size, so we've, in the fly press, which is just out of shot, sorry, in the hydraulic press, just out of shot, we've used the CO2 bottle in the press, obviously with the valve taken out at the end. It was just right to put in the and use that and the V block to do the shaping of this, because it's quite hard to do the straight, then the roll, and then the straight in the bending rollers. It's a bit of an awkward shape to do. So it worked quite well, just clamping it repeatedly around the gas bottle and the fly press. Worked out a nice little tool for that. So yeah, then that's been MIG welded inside, around the inside, then clean all the oxide off on the outside and dig out the back of the weld so it's all clean, and then MIG weld this side as well. So that's all nice and that's all done. So he's done a pair of those. He's finished off a few bits of fabrication on the dash, that were just a few loose ends tying up from the end of last week. And then he's been on to getting the rear subframe fitted. As you can see, that is now fitted on its initial brackets. There's more brackets to go in yet, but the turrets were the next stage on that job really, because there's a knock-on effect of a load of other tasks tied into that. But yeah, he's got the subframe in, and just prior to getting the subframe in, he was just adding the last couple of bits which I hadn't got done, which were the corner gussets in the front. He's just swaged those, and then TIG welded those in, and then welded in the brackets. I think I mentioned that last week, that they've still got to do the brackets for the tie bar that goes across above the diff. That's removable, and it's on a pair of rose joints, so that we can take that bar out to get the diff in and out. So otherwise it's very hard to get the diff in and out. So that bar's removable, and it means you can just wind a little bit of tension on. It's sort of an in situ adjustable bar, and it means you can just put some tension on the frame and leave it with a little bit of tension on the frame, so it reduces the flex on it. So that's all good. So yeah, good progress on here. Tom's been forging ahead with all of that, and yeah, it's coming together nicely. I suppose the next stage on this will be, once I've stopped talking, we're trying to keep it a little bit quiet in the workshop, and everybody was doing noisy jobs, so we've stopped a few things at the minute. But the next stage will be bolting this little jig frame back down to the select beam in the back, and then bolt the suspension turrets to these. These set the position that way and that way for the suspension turrets in the back of the car. Get those in, and get the rear arch tubs in and cut out to clear the turrets, and then get all that lot fabricated in. At that point, we can cut the chassis rail sections out, fabricate the new rail sections, and finish fabricating the brackets that tie the rear frame into the car, and then do all the sheet metal work in there. So yeah, Tom's got a good path ahead on that one. So moving on from that, we'll head this way. We're going to we'll pause by the Churchill Jag next. Stu's been busy on the dash assembly in this. He's done a number of sections. There's quite a bit of design work gone in. The major things he's been achieving are the dash top, which is now fundamentally done, and the dash fascia panels. The fascia panels are in 2mm thick 5000 series aluminium, 5251H22 aluminium. Nice stiff material, works really well for that sort of thing. He's fabricated a recessed housing for the navigation screen and the entertainment controls, the entertainment system controls. I was trying to remember what the controls were on there. It's an Alpine Inco entertainment system, and the Alpine control buttons go either side of the navigation screen in the centre of the dash, and he's fabricated a recessed section. I think it's probably, yeah, it's fitted now, so I can't get it out and hold it up to camera, but there'll be footage of it. He's fabricated a little recessed section for the middle of the dash to carry that, and then fabricated the sides of the dash. I'm just going to poke my head in some, make sure I'm at the right place. And yeah, he's got the tube that he curved up last week, which supports the dash top. Got that bracketed to the A-posts, and then made the sheet steel top for the dash with the slots in for the demis vents. Got all that in place. So yeah, the dash is coming together nicely. fabrication ahoy, and lots of it. So yeah, we will keep watching this space on that. Not a lot more to say really, just lots and lots of fabrication. So yeah, that's coming along well. And then carrying on the whistle stop tour, we'll come round to, oh, I hadn't noticed that your mug is personalised, Bobby. That's very good. I'm going to move that out of the way. I noticed that Bobby's got his personalised mug. It's very good. Yeah, the work continuing apace on the Project 1 Escort. Scott's working on the front with some nitty-gritty work around the dry sump tank. We realised that with the changes we'd done to the oil cooling setup, originally the plan was to go for oil to air cooling. We've changed that now to oil to water cooler, and we've put that in the bottom of the radiator. I think we've mentioned that before. In doing that, silly oversight on my part, but as you know, there's quite a lot going on, so it's easy to have these oversights. I'd forgotten that then the oil cooler pipework is on the engine bay side of the front panel rather than on the forward side of the front panel, which then negates the point of having the de-aeration feed for the oil coming in forward of the front panel. So we've actually done a minor redesign on the dry sump tank. It's not really much of a redesign at all, it's just mirroring one of the parts to bring the oil in on the engine bay side of the panel, because there's no point bringing it in on the forward side. So we're going to feed the oil into the de-aeration cone, if you like, inside the dry sump tank on the engine bay side, and that's necessitated a couple of bit of metalwork alterations in the corner of the engine bay, but that's all dealt with now. George has reworked the CAD, so that's all correct before we send the parts off for machining. Obviously we've got the 3D printed tank that we're using for all the mock-up work at the moment, and then Scott's now fabricated the breather tank, because the mounting for the upper point on the dry sump tank is a bulkhead fitting that goes through the inner wing, mounts the dry sump tank one side, and then has a hose off the other side of it, which feeds into the breather catch tank, which then has a separate drain should you ever need to drain it. I'm sure at some point you will, moisture will get in it, etc. That sits behind the near side headlight, under the inner wing inside the wheel arch, and has a stone protector on it to stop stones damaging the tank, etc, etc. So Scott's fabricated that tank again in 5000 series 2mm thick aluminium. The drawings for that already existed because I've done one before, because that particular part is going to be exactly the same as the one that I did on Gordon's Escort. So got the drawing, so Scott's made a tank to the drawing for that, and he's now putting in the mounting provisions, which are 4-threaded bosses to mount that tank. And he's now also putting the hole through the inner wing so that we can put this union in to bolt the dry sump tank in place with the feed that goes to the breather tank. So lots going on. It's quite a lot of detail work going on there. Bobby's just come through. He's obviously tied up. He's just tied up some loose ends through in the assembly shop. So he's now come through to crack on with some work on the Escort as well. So he's going to be on with the finalising the HVAC system bracketry. We've done, you remember from previous episodes, we've done the forward side bracketry where that connects onto the bulkhead plate that blanks off the back of the heater bubble. We've now got to do the brackets that go onto the dash support rail, the dash support tube in the car. He's got to do the bracketry going to that. That's the next step, and then the next step after that is going to be working out the bracketry, the pipe routing, etc. for the installation of the 12-volt air conditioning compressor, because we're fitting a 12-volt electrically driven air conditioning compressor on this car behind the offside headlamp unit under the inner wing that side, with suitable protection and stone protection, etc. So that's going to be the next phase of work for Bobby to start having a look at that and working out the pipe routings and planning all the bracketry for the pipes, etc. there. And then for my part, a little bit I've done this morning on the car. I've done a few bits in terms of other parts, but the major focus, there's various bits of toing and froing on that because the design's kind of going on in my head really, is for the steering column. With the seating positions required in this car for the customer that this car's being built for, it meant that we needed to actually put the steering column in quite a different place to where it was on Gordon's car. The dash height is exactly the same on this as it was in his, but the steering column needs to be a lot higher for this particular customer. So I've actually made a modification to the dash rail behind the behind the sheet metal fascia of the dash, I've actually created a tubular reinforcer that goes up and over where the steering column's gone, and then I've welded that in place in situ behind the dash, which was an awkward bit of welding, and then bored through the lower dash support tube and the lower dash fascia with a hole saw, just literally bored straight through the whole fabrication there. That's going to get lined with a 2mm sheet steel liner to carry on through that and give that a smooth transition. And then there'll be a bracket on the back of that dash tube to carry the E-Pass unit, electric power steering unit, which is a Vauxhall Agila, which is the same as a Suzuki Wagon R of all things. It's the smaller power assist unit. We found with the big power assist unit, if anything, you very rarely use the full assistance, and it's quite a heavy unit. The Agila type, still an NSK steering motor, but it's quite a bit smaller, and the Agila Wagon R type unit is probably fitted to plenty of other things as well, but they're the two sources that I know of that are convenient. It's quite a lot lighter. It's a lot smaller unit, a lot lighter. We'll probably use more of its output. We'll probably use it harder. We'll probably be using all of its assistance effort, but it's a much lighter unit, so it's just a bit nicer. It's a bit more compact as well to fit in, a bit less clutter behind the dash. So that's the unit that's going in, so it's bracketing that. But there's some knock-on issues there where the column switchgear that we're using, we've been mulling that over because that's quite an important decision from the point of view of the look of the inside of the car. And there's one column switch which we like to use, which is really in keeping with the car, and they're getting quite hard to buy now. We want to buy them new. We don't want to use old second-hand ones, and buying them new is getting quite difficult. So we've been scouring around a bit this morning on eBay in various countries and generally at parts suppliers around Europe, and we think we may have found some in Germany. This particular switchgear that we want to use, we think we've now found some. As long as I can get that, then I can carry on designing the upper steering column. So I've actually got to fabricate a different tube for that and the mountings, etc., to carry the switchgear and to carry the E-Pass unit. But I can't do any of that until we can confirm that we've got the switchgear. The last time we bought some of this switchgear, it was easy to get. So again, we had a minor oversight in that it's now not easy to get. So we're scouting around, and we're also going to get some spare units to make sure that that we've got a spare just in case something goes wrong. So that's where we're at on that. I think that's covered pretty much what's going on the Project 1 Escort. I'll pick up my coffee so I don't lose it and it doesn't go freezing cold, although it's pretty cold now. I think we'll move on. I won't do any autographs update this week, but there's lots up and coming on that, so we'll dwell on that another time, and we'll come into the body prep area where the guys are mainly focused on blitzing this E-Type front end, which is progressing really well. Actually, it's coming along very well. There's a lot of sculpting work, a lot of blending in the sort of ideals of the CAD that are then slightly corrupted by their transition into metal parts, because there's bits of distortion, bits of movement, everything moves around and is never quite the same as the CAD when you've got it welded in place, and then also translating that into an actual blended finished sort of piece where some of the lines aren't quite as you envisaged, some of the things are not quite as you thought, plus the car had some crash damage earlier in its life. So there was a bit of asymmetry in the front of the bonnet area that we're counteracting now. There's a lot of profiling one side, comparing it, checking it to the other side, working out which side is correct, and then doing comparisons, working out where we've got to add material, where we've got to take material out. There's a lot of round and round in circles going on, but it's coming together pretty well. We've had a look over it again just before lunch actually, and come up with a couple of areas that need a bit of modifying, but it's looking pretty good now. It's certainly getting very, very close to the shape it needs to end up at. We're also going back to the sort of chasing tails a little bit. The other thing is, if you take an original Jaguar bonnet, whatever one of those may be, and compare it for symmetry, you'll be very depressed very rapidly at the lack of it. They're very, very inaccurate, sort of even in original, in inverted commas, spec, because I doubt there are very many original ones around. But the aftermarket metal ones are nowhere near symmetrical, as we know, as you'll have seen in previous episodes from the other E-Type we've recently been working on. We had all sorts of problems there, and this is no different. So it could be accident damage, it could just be how it was originally, but to get one of these symmetrical to better than 10 millimeters, I don't think any came out of the factory better than that. I'll be advised by comments on the video, but I doubt that any of them are better symmetrical to better than about 10 mil. And we're trying to achieve better than that because we don't really want to make one of these in composite and have it as asymmetric as an original one might be. It needs to be a step up, not a step down. So we're just trying to get all these bits addressed and get them all corrected before it's too late to do so. And I think that pretty much sums up where we are in Fillerville, or Clagville, as I think it was referred to earlier. So yeah, I think that sums up pretty much where we're at this week. We'll see you next week.
Check it's in tune. Yeah, it's in tune.